Gents, I just want to pause the episode for a moment to let you know about the Strong Men of Value Academy. You will have heard me refer to it a number of times, and I want to bring more attention to it. So this isn't just a program, it's a life-changing environment and community of men who are focused on personal and professional growth. We're looking at areas of relationships, wealth, and health, things to help you thrive and maximize your life. Imagine having bi-monthly one-on-one coaching sessions with myself, weekly group coaching calls, and an incredible brotherhood of high achievers by your side. Now we're diving into resilience, leadership, and holistic growth to not just succeed in your career, but to thrive in your health and your relationships. Your journey to greatness, it starts here. So join the movement and you can apply for the Strong Men of Value Academy. You can head to themanthatcanproject.com to find out more. Ever since I've come across you, I always go to your page for inspiration when I'm having moments of doubt or feeling like I'm not putting in enough work. And
I used to say that CF was my biggest blessing, right, and greatest teacher.
Welcome back to the Man That Can Project podcast. I'm your host, Lachlan Stuart. And if you're tuning in for the first time, epic to have you here. Today's guest is a sensational bloke, and you are going to take away so much from this. Before I share what, I just want to quickly remind you, if you want to find out more about how you can get involved with the Man That Can Project and learn some free stuff, head over to our Facebook group, the Man That Can Project on Facebook. Join the group, and there's plenty of great discussion and an incredible community of like-minded men. We post workouts, we share tips, ask questions. So get involved in there on Facebook. So many of you may not know, cystic fibrosis primarily affects the lungs and the digestive system because of a malfunction in the endocrine system, which is responsible for producing saliva, sweat, tears, and mucus. So there is currently no cure for that. And Bradley Dryburgh is someone who has lived with cystic fibrosis his whole life, and he was given a diagnosis from an early age and his parents were told that he would never live a normal life. Now, Brad is an incredibly inspiring dude. He was born with cystic fibrosis, and his mission is to show every kid, every adult, and every patient with cystic fibrosis that no matter how scary the illness is, or can be at times, you can live a long and incredible life with CF as he plans to do. He's run marathons, he's run ultra marathons, and he's only just getting started. Let's get into today's episode. The Man That Can Project podcast, a podcast empowering career-driven men to live more fulfilling lives. We are here to challenge your beliefs, redefine success, and talk about the important stuff in a relatable way. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. My name's Lachlan Stuart. Let's get into it. So stoked to make this happen, mate. Thank you for making the time.
Mate, such a pleasure. Honestly, I'm loving the stuff that you're doing. So it's a real honour to be on the show and can't wait for a yarn.
Mate, likewise. I've been following you for a while, and then I reached out to you, and unfortunately we've had to go back and forth to make it happen, but you know, good things come to those who wait, and I'm glad we've been patient with each other and can make this happen. Your story and what you're doing now is extremely inspiring. And, you know, ever since I've come across you, I always go to your page for inspiration when I'm having moments of doubt or feeling like I'm not putting in enough work. And you tend to put a post up that gives me the kick up the arse that I need and really puts life into perspective for me. So I'm really excited to have you here to share that with a lot of our listeners today. I guess I wanted to start with Instagram post that you put up recently. I think it was 3 days ago or so, and you posted an article that was in the Lake Times in, what was the date? Wednesday, July 15. Is that 1990? Yeah, 1998, when we actually used to read newspapers. And your caption with this was really moving and really gave a bit of an insight about what we're going to talk about here today. And I'll just quickly read the caption. 22 years before I created the 42 for CF, which is cystic fibrosis, Dad ran 212 kilometers in 3 days. And alongside my mum, they raised huge funds and awareness for the fight against cystic fibrosis. So shows you got awesome support in your life. As I held the front page of the article in my hands yesterday, I couldn't help but notice the now 24-year-old paper wasn't the only thing that had aged. And you guys check out his Instagram to see how old this paper legitimately looks. The words, "he suffers from terminal
genetic disease have not aged well. In fact, they are far from true now. Nor were they ever, sorry, I just tongue twisted myself, nor were they ever in our hearts and minds. I do not suffer from cystic fibrosis. It is my greatest teacher and one of my biggest blessings because I'm stronger for it. I'm unbreakable in the face of it, and I am who I am because I fight it and I continue to prevail. So there's more to that, but that point there, when I was reading, I was like, this dude is unbelievable, and your mindset. So can you take us back, man, Brad, back to, I guess, learning what it was like living with cystic fibrosis, the challenge, or what day-to-day life is. What is cystic fibrosis for a lot of people who may not be aware of what it is?
Yeah, thanks for reading that out, man. It's that's actually not bad for me. I must have really thought about that one. So I actually sounded all right. Usually it's a bunch of dribbling, a bunch of spelling mistakes. But mate, it's for me. You know, I used to say that CF was my biggest blessing, right, and greatest teacher. And in reflection on that, I was just a little off. It's my greatest teacher, but it's not my biggest blessing. My biggest blessing was the family that I was born into. And, you know, my parents, you see my dad there in the paper, and my mum is also the most gorgeous and amazing human being on the planet. And their name's Darren and Diane. They were as prepared for a child as you could be. Like, I'm talking, both worked multiple jobs, slept very minimally, done everything they could to build the dream home that the family was going to be born into. They'd paid it off. They didn't have any debt. They were ready to roll. And so they've planned the perfect pregnancy. My mum ate no processed meat, didn't even look at a glass of wine. Like, if someone was smoking, she was backflipping out of that area. Mate, she'd done everything she could to be the healthiest human being to carry their first child into the world. So on the 12th of April, 1996, the biggest blessing of their life, as I tell them, young me, was born into this world and born seemingly healthy. Now, as any baby would, at 3 weeks of age, they do the Guthrie's test, which is a standard test to check for genetic illnesses. One of those tests is to see whether a baby has cystic fibrosis. Now, CF is actually the most common genetic illness in young Australians. Not a lot of people know what it is, because for a long time, CF was called the childhood's disease because people didn't make it out of their teenage years. And you know, we've come a long way since then, which we'll get to. But essentially what CF is it's a defective gene that transports salt and water to the cell. Without that salt and water, the mucus that moves around the body, and we often think mucus sits just within the lungs and the sinuses, but mucus moves around the whole body through all of your organs. And the idea is that with that effective gene, it should transport mucus, or it should transport the salt and water to the cell, which means mucus moves freely and easily around the body and doesn't get stuck. With CF, because that gene's defective, the mucus is thicker, it's stickier. It tends to sit on the organs, scarring them and impairing the function. And in areas specifically like the lungs, where mucus sits and scars and impairs function and blocks airways, it makes it a breeding ground for infection, which is, you know, the biggest killer in people with cystic fibrosis is, you know, infection after infection and, you know, decreased function of the lungs, inability to breathe, inability to exercise, and eventually the body shuts down. And the other major issue is digestion. So essentially the pancreas is insufficient. It doesn't do its job. It doesn't produce the digestive enzyme required to break down protein and fat when you consume food. So when they got that diagnosis, they knew fuck all about CF. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, man, go for it.
Yeah, they knew.
You'll catch me doing a heat too.
So they started to read up and to research, and they were given a specialist appointment at Westmead Children's Hospital in Sydney. And they rocked up to that appointment, and you can understand, absolutely terrified. You know, it's a cold autumn's day. They're walking into an even colder reception where a doctor sits them down and says, your son would be better off with a terminal illness that would kill him or he'd get over. Cystic fibrosis will ruin his life. And as they heard those words, without hesitation, they both stood up. They walked out. My dad told him, you will never see us or our son again. And they chose to go and find a doctor who had a more positive view. And I say this all the time. The greatest lesson I could have ever learnt in life was that lesson right there. And I didn't know it at the time. You know, I was a baby. But in reflection, what that message was is what you believe is what you'll become. And for me, they believed that I was going to be far bigger than another sad statistic. They knew that I wouldn't be the prisoner of a hospital bed. They knew that my life would be something more exceptional. My life would be healthy. My life would be without limits. And they found a doctor who shared that vision, a doctor by the name of Dr. John Morton. And Dr. John Morton was a leading pediatric specialist in cystic fibrosis, one of the most renowned around the world. And, I talk about the early years of my CF, and I was a bill of health. Like, for everything that was going on, I was diagnosed with liver disease at the age of 9. Didn't bother me. I was diagnosed with diabetes at 13. Didn't give me a fucking shred of doubt that anything would be different. And for the 30 to 50 tablets I took a day, for all the extra measures, for the things that I had to be careful of and the things I had to work on, my mindset was always incredibly positive. And it was because of my parents. They allowed me to believe. They gave me hope, which is the best medicine, right? They gave me all the self-belief and built my self-esteem. And every time I walked into Dr. Morton's office until I was 17 years of age when I went to the adult clinic, the first thing he asked me every single time, without doubt, was not how are you feeling? It was how many medals have you won this month, my boy? And that mindset that is born and bred off the back of that positivity, that hope, is literally what has shaped my mindset now in life. Even little things like the other day, I'm writing a book at the moment, right? And I'm writing about, particularly going back and writing about the early stages of my life, this period, and talk about my younger sister. There's only the two of us, and she's 2.5 years my younger, and she's like my best friend. Her name's Shania. We call her Sissy. And Sissy was so, I guess she had such admiration for her older brother, for me, that she would see me sit there taking tablets as a child and hated the fact that she couldn't take them too. So mum and dad used to buy her strawberry and orange flavored vitamins so she could take tablets with me every meal. And it's funny because I say to her now, what she doesn't believe and what she may never fully recognize is what that done for my self-esteem. And it was the fact that my sister aspired to be like her older brother, for all of the challenges I had, for how different I was to most kids my age, made me feel as though there wasn't anything to be ashamed of. So when I went to school, I didn't care that I took 30 tablets a day. It's just, I'm being me, and it's a badge of honor because guess what? I've got all this that's challenging me. I'm still quicker than you all. I'm still stronger than you all. I'm still better than you all on the football field. And some of my mates will hate to hear that, but they know it's fucking true. And, it's that self-esteem and belief that was built in my childhood that made me feel as though I was unbreakable.
That really highlights some key points that you've spoken about just over the last couple of minutes there around having positive role models and people who champion you. And I think that's applicable to everyone listening to this. If you don't have people who are supporting you or are championing you to be your best self, your parents did it best. They just got up, walked out and said, you'll never be seeing us or our boy again. Many people should be doing that in their own lives with people that maybe they're spending time around. For sure. And then also you're getting your sister, your sissy in the mix there, who's looking up to you and proud to walk side by side and do exactly as you do, regardless of what people may say or what people may think. And that's, to me, that's what relationships should be like. It's like you should be proud of the people. We should all be proud of the people we get to, spend time with.
Mate, I couldn't agree more. And I say to people all the time, one of the things I'm most grateful for in my life is my people, right? And my people form one of the 4 pillars of what an ideal life looks like to me. And I've really intentionally and thoughtfully crafted a group of mates, stayed connected and really tied with my family. Even now, my partner, like it's all people who I have so intentionally, crafted and built a life and a relationship with, because they're people who lift me up. They're people who at my worst would be there. And I know that when they're at their worst, I want to be there too. And, I think we tend to fall victim to in life this idea that, especially because of social media, everyone wants to be around the people who are celebrities or influencers or this or that. I couldn't give a fuck about any of that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I'm like, I was just in LA recently and in New York, and you see the buzz around some people who are there floating about, who look important. And I remember just thinking, fuck, I just wish my best mates were here, wish my family was here. Like, I wish the people who I can belly laugh with over the silliest shit, who when I need to pick me up, they're there for me and vice versa. That's what life's about, man. The people you spend your life with, the people you create memories with, the people that you get to go and laugh about those memories with after, that's what makes life rich. So, mate, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, your people are everything.
I am definitely on the same level there with you around celebrities and idolizing people. I look to people for inspiration, and I get yourself included. There's many people out there who inspire me, but there's never moments where I'm like, I just want to be I want them to be my friend, or I want them to know who I am. For me, I ask myself the question, what specifically is it that inspires me about that person? It could be that they're succeeding in their chosen field, the way they treat their friends and family, or how they portray their life on social media may inspire me. And I go, okay, I don't need them for that. I need to just actually start actioning and implementing that in my own life.
Yeah.
And quite, I've been fortunate to hang around a lot of celebrities and all of that sort of stuff with my wife's profile, and you learn pretty quickly that they're no different to anyone else. They're just generally people who have, I guess, focused on what's really important to them, and put their blinders on and done everything they possibly can to succeed. And once again, the message or learning in that for me is, I get inspired to talk to you, many other people in my life, but the goal is, okay, how can I add value to Bradley right now? And there's so much that you're going to teach me and the people who are listening to this, that when I get off this call with you or this podcast with you, what's one thing that I can implement to make my life better?
For sure.
And that's how
vice versa, man.
I tend to see it. Whereas I do see a lot of people who aren't where they want to be in their life, and they're just so obsessed almost with celebrities and public figures. And it's like, dude, your whole life is passing you by while you're obsessing over this person or this public figure.
You know what? That's the thing that I love most about podcasts, right? And it's the thing I love most about interviewing people, like you said, who have been successful in their space, is it humanizes them. And, when we watch them, if it's say, for example, like your partner, a musician who's unbelievably talented at what they do, and when they're on their stage, they are on, like, they look unbreakable, they look unshakable, they deliver, right? Then when you actually strip that back and you bring them out of that environment and you see them in their natural place around their people, being them off stage, they're not the performer anymore, they're the human, just the human being, not the human doing, then you can see that there is still vulnerability there, there's authenticity, there's challenges, there's crisis points in their life. They are exactly like you. And that's the thing I love about podcasts, and that's the thing I love about interviews in depth, where it gets raw and it gets honest, is when you strip back the glossy stuff on the top, right, and you've got the raw layer at the bottom without any lacquer on it, you go, oh, they're exactly like I am. They struggle with that insecurity too. Or that's a challenge for them, as it is for me. And, even though they're performing at this highest level, they still struggle with the idea of creativity or whatever it may be. And, man, that's a beautiful thing. I think people realize the only difference is at some point there's been a level of self-belief and execution. And once we strip it back and you build that self-belief and then you build that confidence and you execute, man, we're all human beings just trying to achieve the same thing in life, to find something that we're connected to build a sense of purpose and to go out and live a life that's meaningful. So, yeah.
Well said. What is day-to-day life like for you? Because obviously, that doctor said to your parents years ago that life's going to be very challenging for you, and you've taken a different approach. And I did read somewhere where you were saying CIS or CF will not limit or define your life. So working against what you were once told, what is daily life like for you? Man,
daily life right now is the best it's ever been. I would say I'm in a flow. I'm in a great place. It is full of challenges. I will say, to add context, that really up until the age of 18, whilst my medical history was long and broad, and I could fill up a whole hospital's file records with everything that was going on in my rig. But it hadn't challenged me. I felt so good, man. I was on top of the world. But I got complacent. You know, most people turn 18 and they start partying, drinking, taking drugs. I never gave a fuck about any of that, right? I had ultimate perspective. Like I had like true deep gratitude for how lucky I was to have my health. So drinking never interested me because I had liver disease, was never interested in drugs. And I really, mate, I'm an old soul. Like by 10 o'clock, I'm fucking ready to go to bed. So I'm not I wasn't a party guy, but I got professionally focused, right? So I dived into a career in real estate at 20 and my health kind of slipped by the wayside. Like it become less of a focus because I started to think that, you know, I'm healthy, I'll be fine. This isn't going to bother me. I'm on top of it. And, you know, you start to let that slide and you think, oh, if I make money, I'll be stoked. Like if I can make a couple $100,000 a year working in real estate, I'll have a nice car, a nice house. Man, my suits will be flashy. Life will be good. And then all of a sudden, my health started to slide. I see these little challenges pop up. The first one was bleeding lungs at 18 and pneumonia. Knocked me about for about 5 weeks and I lost
bleeding
10
lungs.
kilos. Bleeding lungs, man. Let me tell you, the first time you cough up blood and it's fresh blood and you've been told that this is a life or death situation depending on how quick you get to the hospital and depending on where that blood is coming from, you are terrified. Like I remember I'd been really, really sick. I was supposed to go in for a surgery on my esophageal varices the day before and my esophageal varices fill up with so much blood because of the pressure in my liver and my spleen that if they fill up too much, they can burst and you bleed internally. That happens.
So where are the esophageal varices?
So right at the bottom of your esophagus, right? You got these little varices or veins that course along the edge of your esophagus. Sorry, excuse me. Course along the edge of your esophagus.
You're right.
And where there's too much pressure in the liver and the spleen, the blood that goes in and out needs to take alternate routes. So it starts to find ways out of those organs and it tends to fill up in these veins, right? And so one of my doctors sort of predicted at about 16 this would be happening in me. So they go down every year, they check inside, and if they're too big, they suck them into a little vacuum that sort of pops it up like a little water balloon. They put an elastic band, literally an elastic band around it, kills the circulation, falls off. But if they get too big and burst internally, you can bleed internally and die. So it's like something that we just need to check every 12 to 18 months. So I was scheduled for a routine surgery that was overdue and I got really sick the week of. Like my blood pressure was 180 over 100. I rocked up the hospital. I was coughing like a dog and they're like, mate.
180 over 100.
Yeah, bro. 39 point something degree temperature. They're like, mate, you're seriously ill. We can't take you into surgery. Like we can't put you on anesthetic like this. And so they sent me home and they're like, we've got no hospital beds. We're full. But we're going to try and get you a bed this weekend to come up to hospital and stay for 2 weeks. We need to get you right. So I'm at home watching, I think it was Draft Day, Kevin Costner, outstanding movie with the old man, and kicking on the lounge and, mate, I'm coughing like there's no tomorrow. And I cough. And you know like when you've bit your tongue before, bit the inside of your mouth, or maybe someone's fucking flogged you at the pub or something, you can taste a bit of blood in your mouth. And I could taste it as soon as I coughed. And I was like, oh, that's not good. Yeah, metallic-y. Went straight to the laundry sink and I started coughing up blood. It's fresh blood. And I was like, shit, one of these varices has burst. So, and they've said to me before, if that happens, get the hospital within like 10 minutes. You need to be straight into emergency surgery. So I'm freaking. And I remember my parents are separated at the time. So I'm with my dad, my mum, my sister work together. We're racing in the car, like we're fanging it to the hospital. I'm sitting there with an ice cream bucket in front of me, expecting to start purging this blood up. And when you're 18 and you're like, you don't know whether you're going to live or die in this moment, everything stops and pauses. And I remember calling my mum and my sister's work, and my sister answered the phone. And I said, hey, I'm on my way to hospital. I'm coughing up blood. I don't know what's going to happen, but you need to get there immediately. Excuse me. And they raced to the hospital. Thankfully, my lungs stopped bringing up blood. And we found out that it was my lungs and not my esophagus. And they said, you've got pneumonia and you're probably going to have to spend 3 and a bit weeks in hospital, and end up losing 10 kilos, come out with the best set of abs I've ever had in my life. But I wasn't exactly healthy, right?
Positive.
Yeah. So, you know, you got to take the positives where you get them. And I remember, sorry, man, my voice is so dry because I podcasted for a couple of hours today. I remember
You're right.
sitting in the hospital bed going, far out, how did I let this slip? Because there was a genuine period of my life where my lungs were never an issue. Now they are. Now I'm in it, you know? And sorry, that would have probably been so loud on your headphones. And I remember thinking, far out, like I need to get my shit sorted. I can't let this happen again. But it's like anything, right? You gain a little bit of motivation and you go, I'm going to get back on top of this. And then motivation dies. You know, you get complacent again. You start working a little harder. And the same thing happened, man, year on year. It wasn't always pneumonia. It would be a new lung infection. I'd end up in hospital for a couple of weeks. And my lung function every year was just dropping down. It was just sliding down the cliff face a little bit more and more until I got to about 23 and I'd just gotten really unhappy in work. Like I was in real estate. I hated getting up in the morning. I didn't like going to my job. I used to sit in my car before work just crying, man, just like so upset. How did I go from being so purpose-driven, so inspired as a child, so healthy, to a point now where I'm like, I've lost my health. I've lost my passion for my work. Money doesn't motivate me like I thought it did. I just felt lost. And I remember being in hospital and hey, I'll come back to answering your question about my daily routine soon.
No, you're good.
I remember being
I'm very intrigued.
And I met a guy in the hospital. He was in his 60s. His name was Ernie. And he was staying a room down from me. There was a room full of old fellas and he was one of them. And I had my own private room in the public hospital because I needed to look after my CF from other infections. And Ernie was dying of terminal cancer. And we met. My mum actually introduced me to him. She'd sold him a car before. And I said to Ernie, mate, if you ever need to get out of that room and just get a minute to breathe and have a yarn, come around and just have a chat. And I remember every day from that point for the next 2 weeks, the Bicky and tea cart would come around at 2. We'd grab our Bickies and tea and he'd come in my room, knock on the door. We'd sit and we'd just have a yarn for about an hour. And, mate, he was such an interesting fella. Like, he guarded guys like Ivan Milat in prison. Like, he was a high-profile prison guard.
Wow.
For most of his career. So the first couple times we talk about some of those stories, but then as our chats got deeper, you started to realize that a guy who knew he was about to pass only really spoke about the things of true importance. So we'd speak about the fact that he'd been married and divorced 3 times, was still great mates with all of his wives. He spoke about his children and his grandchildren and the experiences and the memories he had with them, the trips he'd been on with the people he loved. We never spoke about the size of his house or the size of his car or how much money was in his bank. And I remember sitting there thinking, far out, I'm going to a job every day that I hate. I love the people I work with, don't get me wrong, but I hated the job. It didn't feel like it had meaning for me anymore. And I felt that there was a bigger calling for me in life. And I thought, I need to do something about this because I'm 23 and life has tested me a couple times. I don't know what the future looks like. No one does. But what I do have is the present moment and I don't want to waste it. So I left that hospital and a couple months later, I stumbled my way across a book that Mum gave me while I was in there called The Alchemist. I remember reading The Alchemist, my favorite ever book. I've read it like 3-4 times now. And the premise of The Alchemist is a young shepherd boy who feels bound to the life that he chose many years before. And so he does the same thing every year. He travels around Spain with his sheep. He does what a good shepherd would do until he is given a dream to go and chase a great treasure at the pyramids. And so he sells his sheep and he goes on this journey. And ultimately the journey leads him down all of these adventures and paths. He finds love. He meets the alchemist. He turns lead into gold and he eventually realizes that his treasure isn't at the pyramids, but under a tree that he used to sleep at near an old church in Spain when he was a shepherd. But for me, the meaning of that book, when I put down the book for the last time and had finished the last page, was the greatest treasures in life are the simple things, but you will not recognize them, find them, or appreciate them until you go on the quest. And I thought, I am not on the quest. I'm in a job every day that I don't like. I do not feel any purpose or meaning. And I'm not happy. And I was like, I need to change something. So I walked into my boss's office that day, 2 weeks after I just bought a house. And I said, mate, I'm putting in my resignation. And I quit. And from there, it was an incredibly scary period because I had a mortgage and no way to pay it. I had been 4 episodes into my podcast journey at this point in time, but I felt something that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was a bit of fire in the belly. And mate, I started to just grind away. I started to get on top of my health again. I started to share stories every day, which was my first true passion. Storytelling is the thing that I always loved. Like my parents said, my first word wasn't a word, it was a sentence. And like I was always passionate about telling stories and chatting to people. And so as I started to go on that journey, I started to realize that life isn't about motivation, it's about discipline. You know, that Jocko Willink quote, discipline equals freedom. I started to build discipline for the first time in a long time. And that started by running. Mate, I met a group of lads who said, come and run with us. There's this thing called the Active Boys Run Club. We run 5Ks on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. We have a nice long black after and a swim and a good yarn. And I thought, I fucking hate running, but I love coffee. I love a swim and I love a yarn. So I rocked up, and I rocked up 4 weeks in a row. 3-1. Yeah, exactly. And I rocked up 4 weeks in a row, and it was tough every time. Like I barely made it through 5Ks. And on the fourth week, I ended up in hospital again with bleeding lungs. And I remember sitting in a hospital bed, and for the first time in a long time, what felt like a huge crisis point, a huge challenge, what felt like and was recognized as adversity, it was received differently because I had that taste of hope again. I had that self-belief. I thought, I'm starting to create a path and pave the path that is for me now, that is going to get me out of this space and into a new place. That's going to, I guess it's going to reinstate the purpose that I'd lost. And I remember coughing up blood 3 days in a row. On the third night, I was sitting in emergency with my old man, and we were just sitting there, and that photo that you talked about in that article popped up, and another one of him crossing the finish line with a can of Tui's. And I said to Dad,
how good.
I said, mate, you know what? I'm starting to enjoy this running thing. And for the first time in my life, I feel compelled not just to recover and be healthy for me, but I want to do something to uplift and inspire hope in others. So I said, in 4.5 months' time, I'm going to run a marathon by the end of the year on December 12th and prove that you can come back from bleeding lungs in hospital. And I want to do it to raise money, and I want to do it more so to promote that message that nothing is impossible for people with CF. And literally in that moment, mate, the minute I left that hospital, I announced it. CF Australia combined and we made it the first official marathon in Wollongong's history where I live. And mate, I was on a journey, and within 6 weeks, I went from struggling to run 5Ks to running my first 25K solo. And I remember sitting down at the end of it a little bit teary because things had changed so quickly. And don't get me wrong, like the first 4 weeks after every long run, I coughed up blood and like things were still challenging, but I had that hope. And I remember just recognizing for the first time in my life that purpose fuels progress. And I was like, I'm so deeply connected to this purpose now, this purpose that I recognized as, uplifting and inspiring hope in others through story, whether that be mine or someone else's that I share on the podcast. And this time, sharing that story is through putting one foot in front of the other, with a pair of fresh sneakers on and a pair of, some sort of sick running kit. And in the process, there is a selfishness to it too, because I get to get healthy. And mate, it's changed my life. 2.5 years later, to answer your question now, my life is very consistent. It's up at 4:45 in the morning. It's either a trot or a walk. It's always followed by a swim in the ocean, a couple of coffees with mates, a great yarn, just uplifting chat to start the day, chat of depth. It is, like being in the studio, podcasting, it's writing, it's, trying to get on stage and share my story as a keynote speaker. It's doing everything I can to move the needle in the right direction. And everything has to be connected to that purpose, to uplift and inspire hope in others through story. And mate, I am broke as a joke right now. There is no money coming in, but I'm so inspired. I'm so pumped up. And I'm like, I always find a way to make it work. If it means working jobs to keep things moving, I do it. If it means that I get a little bit of cash off the back of a podcast advertising promotion, or if it means I get a little bit of cash off the back of a keynote speaking gig, I do what I can, but I can't lose that purpose, man. I'm so connected to that now. And it's, it's a healthy lifestyle. It's doing all my nebs. It's 30 to 50 tablets a day, but it's second nature, man. And I love it.
Mate, I love that story. I
appreciate it.
Beautiful how life works when you decide to take control for it. When you have that moment because I went through something in 2014 where I was in a position where I didn't like waking up. And a dude gave me a book, and the book, once I read that book, it changed my whole life and it changed my outlook. And I, much like you, I was like, I want to do more. Like, I feel like I'm here for more. And I was so excited by the opportunity of creating, and I was dead broke till like 2017, the end of, there was 3 years where I was scraping on the, bones of my ass, and my wife was supporting me, and so many things were happening and not going my way. But I was just so committed to, from a selfish standpoint, what I do is practice what I preach, which in turn inspires other people to take ownership through their life through physical and mental fitness. And it's like, I do it anyway. So I love the fact that now I've, over a 7-year period, of being able to create a business out of it, a successful podcast, and I still wake up every single day so bloody excited to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel a lot of people lose motivation and they lose inspiration because they're so focused on money or status and recognition, and it's not really aligned with a true purpose. As you said, you were saying purpose is progress, which I think is beautiful, because when you can get aligned to that, life is phenomenal. And it's not always easy, it's not smooth, but it's sure as shit fun, and you become a better person every day that you wake up to grow through it.
And you know what? And you can see that.
So
like
talk to us about...
You're smiling, man. When we're chatting, you're smiling, I'm smiling. It's because there's that connection of like, this is for the betterment of people. Like, this is good. This feels good. It's aligned with purpose. It's like, you can't replace it, man. I'm telling you now, if someone offered me $1 million to go back to real estate tomorrow, and don't get me wrong, if real estate is your thing and you can connect a purpose to it, go for your life. But it just isn't for me. And like, I would sacrifice everything for this. So, man, I fully agree with you.
And that's why you're going to continue to be successful. Like, I always believe if you are authentic and chase what's important to you, you'll make it work and people will notice, and it just continues to grow. Like I was saying to my business partner last night at dinner, because we've restructured our company, and 2018 or 2019 was my most profitable year ever. And I changed my business model. And he's like, what'd you do that for? I was like, I thought that's what I wanted, but it wasn't fulfilling my lifestyle. It was at the detriment to my relationships and so many other things. So I wasn't going to do it anymore. So I was like, it ticked a few boxes, but there were a few boxes that weren't being, ticked. So I was like, okay, well, how can I keep as much of what's being ticked and try and fill these other boxes? And we've shifted and continued to grow and mold as we've needed to make sure that, at the forefront, I'm still happy, I'm still fulfilled. Because if I'm not happy, if I'm not fulfilled, then I'm not going to inspire anyone. I'm not going to, lead by example. I can't practice what I preach.
That's it.
Let's talk about the marathon decision. Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
I still haven't run a marathon.
Well, mate, let me tell you, you move a whole lot quicker than I do, because I'm following your stuff, and mate, you're a weapon. I have no doubt that if you went and ran a marathon tomorrow, you'd polish one off quicker than I did. But the marathon for me, it was, like I said, it was inspired by my old man. He ran 68 Ks 3 days in a row, and let me tell you, he reminds me about it every day. So one day I'll have to do something a little bit more hectic than that, just for bragging rights around the our home. But a marathon felt significant. I think there's something about a marathon that connects. Firstly, there's something about a physical feat that connects human beings. I think we all can relate to physical pain more so than we can mental pain at stages in our life, because some people haven't faced mental challenges. Some people haven't faced like internal health challenges, but we all know that, like, when you're pushing yourself or you go for a run or you go do something physical, it's bloody hard. And I think the nature of CF being very lung driven, and my lung function at the time I ran my first 2 marathons was like 74%, 100% being normal for people my age. So, so it was like, it just felt like a really beautiful way of going, hey, like, this is still possible regardless of the challenges and the hurdles. So, I remember setting the challenge, and the first thing you do anytime you want to set a hefty challenge is you put it on social media, because then you're accountable, right? So I left hospital.
Accountability.
put it straight up, and everyone got around it. And I'm like, no backing out now, like I'm deep in it. And so I remember sitting there though after I'd posted it, and I thought, holy fuck, how do you prepare to run a marathon? Like I had no idea, right? And there's a guy that I'd had on the podcast at, I think it was episode 12 of my podcast, like a long time ago. It's at like 146 now. So I remember sitting there and thinking about Benny Seymour. And Benny was a former rugby player.
I love Benny.
Mate, what a man, hey. What a man. I've got so much love and time for Benny. He's the best. And I remember just thinking, the thing that stood out for me was a guy who was like a heavier guy, like a rugby player turned ultra endurance athlete. And at the time I was 88 kilos and it wasn't a great 88 kilos, like a bit of a dad bod, bit of a real estate rig, I used to call it. And I was like, I'm not
real estate rig.
Yeah, real estate rig of doom. And I was like, mate, I'm not a 62 kilo marathon runner. Like I don't know how to prepare for this and stay healthy in my joints and my body. And I could, just run 5Ks, but it was a struggle. So I remember texting Benny and saying, hey, this is what I want to do. I've got 4.5 months to get ready for it. Can you train me, write me a program? Benny's in Sydney, I'm in the Gong. I said, can you just write me a program for my weights and my running, and I'll pay you whatever it costs. I just need to know I'm on the right track. And he FaceTimed me the next morning and was like, mate, I love the cause. I'm really close to it. I not only want to train you, I'm going to do it for free and I'm going to come and run it with you. And like, what a bloke, right? And so every day he would call me and say, hey, how's the rig? What do you got to report? Where we at with your run yesterday, and vice versa. And just every week we just built up and we started to like build real diversity in my training in the gym. I started to build up. I had, really intentional runs, long runs, fast Fridays, like tempo stuff. Like I started to feel good, man. I lost 12 kilos by the marathon date. And I'm telling you, like I still share photos of that day because I looked my best. You know what I mean? If you see a photo of me on Instagram, not right now with abs, it's from then because I looked good. Like you're not seeing that now, mate. The rig doesn't look like that now, right? And so,
mate, we've all got that favorite list of photos we repost.
Bloody oath, mate, and they're all from that day. And and so I got there, but the thing was, a month out from the event, I was feeling so sharp. And just as we were like getting ready to peak into like last big long run, get another 30 odd Ks under the legs, I got a massive bleed in my lungs and had to go to hospital in an ambulance. And at the time my lungs were still full of infection and there's, still is plenty of scarring in them. And I remember sitting in the hospital bed thinking, that 30K was pretty tough last week. I've just had a major bleed in the lungs. I'm a month out. This would be a good excuse. Like no one's going to question it. If I say, hey, massive bleed in the lungs, no one's going to go, oh, he's bitched out. They're all going to go, oh, poor bloke. Like, yeah, fair play. You got the 30Ks. You raised some money. Good on you. And I remember sitting there and like thinking about that option. And then the doctor walked in the room and he said to me, mate, what's going on? And the first thing I said without hesitation was, mate, I don't know, but I've got a marathon to run in a month and I will be at the start line no matter what. So what do we have to do to get there? And just that instinct, that discipline kicked in. And for me, that is probably a more proud moment than the moment of crossing the finish line itself, because I think that's when I knew that this had become a lifestyle, that I'd become this kind of man, the man that wasn't going to back out when things got tough, the bloke who had actually built resilience to face my adversity in life. And it spent 2 weeks trying to get well, and I was only allowed to run 2 weeks before the event, and I didn't get much training in, but I knew when I had my 2 feet on that start line, it was go time and I'd get there no matter what. And it was a tough day, brother. It was a tough day. There are some grim looking shots and videos of me with about 2Ks to go. And mate, I look like I am on my absolute last legs. But I'll tell you now, there was 13 of us that ran it. We'd raised 50 odd thousand by the day's end. And I remember crossing the finish line,
man. Well done.
And I had, the thing that got me through that day is I'd written on my wrist on a piece of elastoplast, for all you've done today, I'll make you proud. And I had dad, mum and sis on the inside of my wrist. And I actually got it tattooed on my wrist after the event to make sure that it's there forever. And I remember just looking down at that every day and thinking, you know, they sacrificed everything for me to be here today. You know, I was supposed to be another sad statistic. I wasn't supposed to make it out of my teenage years. I was supposed to be bound to a hospital bed, the prisoner of it. And my life was supposed to look very different to how it was now looking. And across the finish line of the 42.2 for me was an amazing gift to them, a gift to say thank you for everything you've done. And more importantly, go to bed and don't stress about me at night, because regardless of what I face, I'll come through the other side. So, and it was also a great moment, you know, after I finished, as only I would, I had a 6.5-minute victory speech. And I stood up there in front of, you know, 100 odd people who had gathered at the finish line to make this day really special, you know, friends, family, people who just wanted to support from the community. And I remember saying that, you know, 24 years ago at the time, I was 24 years of age, a doctor said that I'd be better off with a terminal illness, that cystic fibrosis would ruin my life. And after 42.2 Ks, I put my hands up and I said, fucking look at me now. And for me, that was a
Yes.
that was a real moment. You know what I mean? That was a moment for me. That was my gladiator moment. Are you not entertained? You know, that was me standing in the arena, battered and beaten, still fucking alive and kicking and ready to go again. So I think
ready to go again.
That's it, brother. And that is, for me, that is life. Like, and the funny thing is, people would think, oh, like, you've run a marathon, mate, you'll be sweet now. The next one we ran, man, I was so sick. 2 weeks out from the event, I'm on Sunrise, the morning show, and I'm sitting there with a drip attached to my arm. Bro, I got a drip in a bum bag.
Why you're on Sunrise?
Yeah, because I'm like, man, I'm crook as a dog. I'm coughing up blood again. I'm not supposed to run. I'm like, I'm running anyways. You know, like the doctor said, we don't want you to run, but we know you're going to run because we know you. But I'm like, this is the journey, man. It's the top of one mountain is the bottom of another, and you just have to keep climbing. And the beauty is, the more you keep climbing, no matter how big the mountain is, no matter how many times you were back at the bottom, you build that discipline, you build that. And here's the thing, resilience is an attribute. You can develop it, you can build it. And you just continue to build it to a point where it doesn't matter what's in front of you, you'll keep climbing. And that was the non-negotiable. It doesn't matter what's in front of me, I will keep climbing. It's why when I finished the second, I was like, I need to do a third. It's why after doing my third 8 weeks ago at Melbourne, which is much healthier, I've actually had a new drug in the CF world called Trikafta, which has changed the game. My lung function's up 10%. Haven't had a bleed in the lungs in 6 months. I'm as strong as an ox, brother. I feel great. Yeah, it's wild. And
that's
like,
unbelievable.
Put on 5 kilos of muscle. Like, I feel good. And
you're a beast.
I'm like, bro, I feel so good, right? And I finished that third one and I'm like, that was a piece of piss. I felt good. I never hit a wall. I'm like, what do I do now? It's why I'm running 50 Ks in a week and a half on the 12th of December. Because I'm like, I need to push myself. Like, I've gotten to a point now, and don't get me wrong, I'm no Goggins. I'm no Ned Brockman. I'm no Will Googe. Like, I'm none of these dudes, right? Like, that for me is not my goal in life, to be a sick runner, right? But it's like, and I don't know if it's even their goals either, but like, you know, they're there to inspire people and uplift people too. But I don't know that it's ever going to be that extreme for me. Maybe it will one day. I don't know. But the thing for me is more proving to myself first that I've still got that dog in me. You know what I mean? If I need it, that dog's there.
Yeah.
It's ready to go.
I think you're of a similar mindset to myself, where you mentioned before purpose drives progress. And when you're someone who chases progress, much like myself, it's always going to get bigger, because when you as you said, the peak of one is the bottom of another mountain to climb, and it's always going to get bigger, right? Whether that's, you know, you're doing a 50, you'll probably end up doing a 70 or 100 down the track as well, because it's just like, okay, well, I've shown myself it's possible. We're always trying to overcome those limiting beliefs or restrictions in our life. And once we do that, it's like, all right, I'm not just going to sit here and look at myself in the mirror and go, God, I'm good. It's like, let's do the next thing. Let's challenge, because through the challenge comes growth.
Bloody oath. And, you know, I said to myself,
I want to ask you a question.
Sorry, brother. I said to myself after this last mara, I said, oh, I might take a few weeks just to chill. And then you just start getting comfortable and you're like, I don't want to get comfortable at 5 or 10 Ks again. I want to be comfortable running a half marathon on a Sunday with the boys. Like, I want to be comfortable in those uncomfortable positions, because the minute you let it slide, you're like, you got to rebuild it. So, and that's not to say that you can never take your foot off the pedal, because there's a time and a place for that. But right now, I'm not ready to do that. There's more to achieve. So it's, foot to the floor. Let's have a dig. See what I'm made of.
Well, it reflects who you are as a person as well, right? You're not doing it, as you mentioned before, you're not trying to be Ned Brockman, Goggins, and also they're probably not doing it to be the sickest runner, as you said. Yeah. It's like you're doing it because it's that challenge and you want to continue to prove that to yourself, and it's a part of who you are as an individual. Like the outcome is finishing the marathons, but it's the daily grinds where there's probably days, I'm sure, where you don't want to get up and run, but you do it anyway. Or your body feels sore, or your lungs are playing up, and you just keep going, because that shows the character of who you are as a person, Bradley.
For sure.
I wanted to ask you a question around, you mentioned, I can't remember the exact name of what they used to call cystic fibrosis around not living out of your childhood.
Yeah.
What's the average life expectancy and all of that like, and does that ever play on your mind at all?
Yeah, so the average life expectancy right now in Australia is 41. I have the most severe mutation, is what they call it, of CF. So there's a couple of different mutations that differ in severity of the disease. Yep. I think in the next 10 years it will change. I actually think we're a decade or two away from having a cure for this. I believe that with this new drug, Trikafta, I think we'll see that life expectancy get towards 50. However, here's the thing, mate, that will never be my reality. And I don't think it needs to be the reality of anyone else either. Like I said, hope is the best medicine. There are controllables in the uncontrollable game of cystic fibrosis. Whilst you can't control everything that happens or everything that challenges you, you can control the way that you react to those things. You can control what you get up and do health and fitness wise today, what you eat, the fact that you're consistent with your medication and your practices. You can control a lot of these things. Now, I'm telling you, mate, I will make it to 100. I will be that old fucker whose kids are going, mate, when are you kicking the bucket? We want our inheritance. Like, mate, there's nothing stopping me. Like, it's tried to stop me. It's tried to knock me down. Mate, I'm that resilient. Mate, I'm fighting fit. I honestly think it's all in the mind. And it's the same as everything, man. You know, when someone gets like a terminal diagnosis, if they start beating themselves up in here, in the mind, in between the ears, it is so hard to beat, because the body starts shutting down. It starts giving in. And there's something about that mental power, man. And it's, mate, this could sound a little bit spiritual, but there's something about like the way that mind connects with the strength of the inner human, man. And it's like, if you've got that in you, you'll fight anything. You'll hang on when times are tough. You'll get through the other side. And I honestly think it's all about that mind. And I've always believed that 41 or 36 as it was, or teenage, whatever they said, I said that would never be my reality. Like, I would find a way to keep moving forward when times got tough. And I believe it can be the same for so many other people. You know, it was years ago that people thought, cystic fibrosis, as they used to call them, sufferers, and I hate that word, cystic fibrosis patients, would not be able to run marathons. Mate, I'm not even that extraordinary in this community anymore. There's heaps of people doing great stuff. Got guys like Ben Mudge over in the UK, gracing the cover of Men's Fitness. The bloke looks like he eats weights for breakfast, like absolute animal. Josh Lewin-Jones, the guy throws himself at these ridiculous challenges, bloody crushes them every time, absolute weapons. Sophie Grace Holmes over in the UK as well, in Wales. Soph is an absolute weapon. Like, nothing will stop her. There's guys like Kyle Collis here running ultra marathons, a CF dad. I've got guys like Rory McDonald in Queensland doing Ironmans. Like, mate, I'm not even that extraordinary. I just can't shut up. More people hear about my stuff. That's the difference. So I think, and that's why I promote to these guys and I chat to these guys, and I'm like, I don't want to live in a world where I'm the extraordinary guy with CF doing stuff. I want everyone with CF to be doing these things, to have no limits. I just want to share them, and I want to be vocal about them, because for me, I had the blessing of parents who had hope, parents who had belief. Not everyone would have that blessing, right? And I could not have blamed my parents had they had heard that first diagnosis and those first very harsh words and believed them as a reality, because that was a CF specialist. But I'm so blessed that they didn't. That's been brilliant to me. That's a part of who I am and the belief and the vision I have for my life now. And my role is for those people who have maybe received it negatively and believed it to flip that script for them now. So, mate, I think the path looks amazing for people with CF. And what's life expectancy anyways? Because who's to say that tomorrow you don't get hit by a bus? Life expectancy is fake. It's just all bullshit. It's fugazi, right? Mate, no, nothing's set in stone here on this earth, man. So exactly, it's just you go out there, you have a dig, you keep healthy, you do everything you can, you control the controllables, and you let life be.
Spot on. Thanks for sharing that, man. That was great to get the insight into. Where can people follow along with your journey? Obviously, you're running the marathon in, 10 days?
Yeah, it's getting pretty
close.
close, man.
Are you running on the 12th?
Yeah, I'm 99.99% it'll be the 12th. It may be the 11th if something changes, but either way, it's getting done in like 9 or 10 days. Mate, the best place to follow me, like the hub of everything I do, is on Insta. So at Bradley J Dryburgh, it'll pop up with a captain, which is just a very egotistical nickname that has been said amongst my mates. So disregard that. I swear to God, I'm not a flog. And it's, that Insta is essentially the hub of everything I do. It's where I share the running stuff, the charity events. It's where I share the podcast, my speaking gigs. It is essentially the hub of all things related to me. And, it's just me living life. I'm pretty active on there. And, anyone who hears this and wants to have a chat or wants to share their story, I'd love to hear it. I'm always open to chatting to new people. And it's a blessing anytime someone connects and feels like they've been positively impacted by what I've had to share.
Yeah, and you obviously do speaking as well. So if you want to get in touch and book Bradley for a talk, or even, I know, podcast guests listen to this as well, get Bradley on your podcast as well, because he's got a great story to share.
Yeah, and I promise you always get your value for money, because whatever sort of time limit you set for me, I'll always go over. You better believe I'll always go over. So you're getting your value for money. Just make sure I'm at the end of the night.
It's perfect. Yeah. Bradley, thank you so much for coming on, mate. It's been a pleasure. For everyone listening along, I'll have had Brad's links below wherever you're watching it, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or any of those other random players that people listen to podcasts on as well. So thank you guys for tuning in, and do something today to be better for tomorrow.
Can I say quickly before we go, bro? I just want to say that I'm super humbled by the opportunity to come on the show. I want to give you the credit that you deserve. You're a leader amongst men. I recognize you as someone who is doing great things and having great impact, affecting real change in not only your community, but the community who hear about that. And let me tell you, word travels fast, I should say. And so I want to commend you for the work you do, mate. I think you're an absolute weapon. I'm loving following your stuff on socials, and I would love to flip the script, man, and get you on my show to share your journey, because I know that you've got a lot to say of real value, and mate, it'd be a privilege.
I'd love to jump on, and thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And what's the name of your podcast so everyone can check that out as well?
It's quite a lot to talk about, which would make a whole lot of sense after you've heard this.
Thank you for listening to the Man That Can Project podcast. My name is Lachlan Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. If you did, please take a moment to rate and review the Man That Can Project on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our newest episodes. We'll see you again next time.